Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, I'm a programmer at TIFF now, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Stephanie Kaliner, who I first met when she and Sarah Hennessy made their very clever 70s comedy Terrific Women for CBC Gem. She's also written on everything from Schitt's Creek to Cavendish and become a serious force in children's television, and now she's turned Kate Beaton's delightful book The Princess and the Pony into a downright charming Apple TV Plus series, Pinecone and Pony. It premiered on the service earlier this month. It's all sorts of fun, and you should check it out. Steph picked Moana, the 2016 Disney hit about a plucky young woman who sets out to save her people by finding a demigod named Maui and convincing him to restore the heart of Te Fiti, bringing balance back to the world and prosperity back to her island. With a lively voice cast that includes newcomer O'Leal Cravalho and Dwayne Johnson at his most charming, a song score co-written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and a beautiful visual aesthetic, Moana remixes the usual Disney princess adventure narrative, tweaking its cliches in order to show us how far they'll go. I like it a lot. This is Someone Else's Movie.
It's been the Disney movie and the animated movie that excited me most over the past forever. My old favorite Disney movie was Little Mermaid, and I still love Little Mermaid. But then after I saw Moana, I was like, I think we have a new contender. And that was really exciting to me because Little Mermaid's obviously very old. And so it's really special to love a new one. And then, I could go on and on about all the reasons why it's such a great movie. Shall I?
This is what we do, by all means.
Well, I guess for me, I love how simple it is. The story is just so straightforward. It's so clear, beginning to end, what her journey is, and you don't really see a lot of the classic hero's journey with a female lead, and there's no romantic interest in it at all. She is just a person who has a dream of being, being an adventurer, being a sailor, Voyager, and that's it. And that's her goal. And she does it. It's just so simple and clear all the way through. And it's in it. And in that way, it feels very male, traditionally male. And I just love that about it, and she just feels like such a real person.
Yeah. I saw it cold at a press screening that year, when it came out. It was the big Disney Christmas movie, the big holiday release, the Thanksgiving release, but this big November movie that they were just gunning for us. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. And I remember when Taika Waititi was announced as writing it, and we'd spoken about it very briefly when he came through for What We Do in the Shadows, but he showed up not long after the TIFF screenings to do a separate interview tour. And I said, you've written a Disney movie. And he's like, I know, it's weird. And he wouldn't go into it. I don't think he could. And then that was 3 years later that Moana finally came out. And apparently he says the only thing left of his original screenplay is Exterior Ocean Day. I don't believe that, because this does have a sensitivity and an intelligence to it that makes me think of the stuff that he has subsequently done. It's subversive in a family-friendly, audience-friendly way. It sort of lets you know what it's doing to not be a princess movie. As you say, it could have just as easily been a dude story.
Yeah.
There is, Moana is technically a Disney princess. She's, the daughter of a chief, but none of the princessy stuff happens. And even the setups for the obvious Disney narrative, I don't even know what you'd call them. They're signposts. The things that always happen in these movies are immediately thrown out, the fact that the wrong pet comes along. It just keeps delighting in refusing. There really isn't a villain. There's just selfishness and emotional.
Yeah.
It sort of prefigures Encanto in that way, that these are films where these are stories where families are at odds because of who they are, not because of an external threat. And I was really struck watching it again. It's just about people making bad choices and trying to make the best of them. It's surprisingly mature for a film about, an adventurous young woman. It's not prepubescent, right? It's designed for grownups as much as it is for kids.
It's true. And even though I said that it felt very male to do the hero's journey, just because that's what we've seen before,
Sure.
the thematically, the movie feels like almost like for women by women. Like it feels so true. Like she feels so true. Like she doesn't feel like this manic pixie dream girl, or she doesn't feel like lovesick, or like I just feel like I haven't seen her before except in real life, like she's a bit awkward, but she's not self-hating, but she's not like she doesn't, how do I explain this? Like they don't make a meal of her like being awkward and having a ton to learn. They
Mhm.
make her feel like, oh yeah, she's a person who has a dream. She doesn't like hate on herself. She's no like Bella from Twilight. She's very just very genuine, and in that she's very strong, and she falters sometimes, but she picks herself back up, and she has that conversation with her grandma Tala, and it's like, yeah, that could very well be happening through magic, but it also could just be happening in her own mind, like giving like being like, no, actually I am strong, and finding that within herself, and then I love that the conclusion is like really just this female to female moment of like, I see you and I see that you've been wronged, and you're not my enemy, and you're not lashing out because you're mean, you're hurting. And I felt like that to me felt like a very female moment, like of empowerment, and being like, and not demonizing Maui for like making a mistake, because because everybody makes a mistake, and he really learns a lot from Moana, which is really beautiful too. And I don't know, it just really feels like a movie, but a woman getting her due.
It is. I mean, it's a Legends arc, right? I mean, you've got the way Maui is set up as a trickster god, but still a demigod, but still someone of incredible power, charisma, charm. And so of course you cast Dwayne Johnson because he can do that. But also, if you listen to the way he brags about himself, he's confessing. He's like, I stole this, I did that, I took this. And then gradually at the very end, when we can jump all over the narrative, it's fine. It's a 6-7-year-old movie. I'm sure everybody knows what happens. At the very end, when he's sort of held accountable emotionally, instead of, he's not going to go to prison or anything. He's found to be guilty in a way that is like, it's personal, and it makes him feel empty in a way that I really didn't see coming. Just the fact that he can't bluster anymore, and that Johnson lets him be, it's not vulnerability exactly. It's more like acceptance. It's just such an interesting choice, because there would be like every other movie we've seen before has a big battle between the outed, like even Frozen has the villain being shown up at the end and being revealed, and then it becomes like an Agatha Christie thing for 5 minutes where they're dealing with, well, I was the bad guy all along. It's like, okay, you still don't have ice powers. You're not a major threat. Here, they sort of know that there's nowhere to go with it, that it just has to be it has to be confronted and resolved. And it's so strangely mature. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a Disney film that's had conflict resolution before.
Yeah, and it's the power of Moana's heart, and it's really like in the end, instead of a battle, she's like a mediator. It's like the power of mediation. It's like it's so it's the power of like good therapy ultimately. And like Moana's big power with Maui was that she like listened to him, and she didn't put him up on this pedestal, and she let him just be his human side, and then through that get into like he opened up to her, and he told her about his past and why he is the way he is, and like that is a move that you'd see in therapy. Like that's like closure for him. Like you're like, good for you, man, you've had a breakthrough. And like it's thanks to like the humanity of this person, of Moana.
And it could sort of run afoul of, the Mary Suing that people were accusing the Star Wars sequels of being, where, Rey is just there to be a fan of everybody and also help. Moana doesn't have that. Like, she knows the lore, but she has her own path. The whole first act is about her determining what's going to happen for not just herself, but her entire people, because she's trying to break a cycle of stasis that her father is committed to, even though her dad, as it turns out, has perfectly good reasons. I mean, they're hard to argue against. Everybody has a point of view and everybody has a perspective that is, it's valid for them. And it's sort of the movie's job to show us in the audience how that isn't working, how it's self-defeating, it's self-destructive even, to just make your own mythology without actually trying to change anything about yourself. I was like, I was really struck. And maybe it is simply that, we've had this incredible boom in animation, where we are getting adults who've grown up on the Disney Renaissance, realizing what they can bring to it, right? Every generation improves on the thing that the last generation did. But the maturity involved in some of these projects now, like, it's just commonplace. If I see something that doesn't have a third layer of metaphor or drama, I'm actually annoyed at this point, which is weird because some stuff can just be for kids. But Moana is like so emotionally aware and mature, and it's in the songs, it's in the design, there's acting in the pixels, like so much is going on. It's so much richer than I remembered. And I remembered it being pretty great.
And the water is a character too. And it's just, it really is so lovely. But the thing is like, you're right. Like, so many Pixar movies, Disney movies now have a lot of layers and they're wonderful. And then they reduce you to like a puddle when you're watching it as an adult. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? I appreciate it. That was beautiful. That was so smart. Is this for a kid? Could a kid follow this? And with Moana, the thing I love about it is so, deep. As we talk about it, I'm even like, realizing more, like listening to you talk, I'm like, yeah. Like, it is so smart, but at the same time, it's so simple. It's very, very clear. And there's almost like a power to its simplicity, that it's not, adding like all these layers upon layers of like deep psychology on top of Moana for adults to connect with. It's, it really is like, I have a dream and I'm going to do it. And it really feels like it's for a new generation because, like you said, like her dad is holding their village back, from growth. And Moana is growth. Like, she's the next generation coming along to say, like, I'm not trying to cancel you for this. I'm not punishing you for this. I get why you're doing this out of love, but it's time to be brave and it's time to, get back to our deep roots and bring you forward. Like, she's the new generation, but she's also hearkening back to her ancestors too. So, it's also saying to the audience, like, you're not just some new thing trying to overturn the status quo. You're a part of this legacy, even though you're brand new, even though you're the future, and I thought that was a really great message for kids too. And Moana speaks truth to power. Like, anything that shows kids that you can tell an adult respectfully that things need to change, I think is very powerful.
Yeah, it's not punitive, right? Like, it isn't, it doesn't mean that okay, in practical terms, it does mean the way of Moana's people is ending, but it's going back to the thing they did. I mean, I'm trying to think of an analog where there is some kind of, maybe it is the Star Wars sequel thing where the Jedi are gone, but we can bring them back if we do it properly, which never works for anybody. But this is right around the same time, right? Like, it's sort of bubbling in the consciousness with the way we were starting to interact with the things we loved as kids, coming back as grown-ups now to sort of re-embrace them as adults. And now we've seen fan culture go so far in the other direction that it's actually become really just incredibly uncomfortable, because now we're fighting over how much we love something and do you love it enough? I'm sure it's always been the case, but it's just so much worse now. Yeah. But this is about like ancestral fealty and learning to take the things that work for you rather than the things that work for your grandparents. And yeah, again, you have the voice performers of such incredible tenderness. Rachel House, who is this New Zealand legend, as the grandmother. She's playing a character like a few decades older than she really is, but she just has enough hesitancy and tenderness that you buy it. It's just, you immediately see the value that this character has had to Moana and her whole family and their people.
Yeah.
And it's not like you could be told this in 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, and I think there are those basic expository lines, but House's voice just tells you everything you need to know about how much she loves her granddaughter and how like she goes away pretty early on in the narrative. I remembered her hanging around a little longer, but the movie moves pretty fast. And I'm just struck at how tender and how well established that relationship is before she goes.
Well, I love that she's telling her to be true to herself, and that being true to herself also means being true to her people, because, there's no better celebration of people around you than by celebrating yourself, because it gives everybody permission to be themselves. And there's so much power in that. And yeah, it's such a simple message. And I find that, like, I feel like Disney is really embracing that too, with, like, I feel like there was like similar themes in Turning Red about like embracing the person you're becoming. Yeah, I just love it so much. And yeah, you're right. Rachel House is fantastic in it. I cry every time she sings this song to her, about like, you love the sea and your people, you make your whole family proud. Like, and what you say, yeah, sometimes the world seems against you. The journey might leave a scar, but scars heal and reveal who you are. Like, oh, it's such a great message for kids, like to just like keep going, and your hardships become a part of you and make you stronger. And it's just so joyful. And by the way, Rachel House is also on in Pinecone and Pony.
That's fantastic.
Starting from episode 1.
I mean, did you get to work with her closely? Was it all done virtually?
Everything was virtual. And it was so hard to schedule with her because she's in New Zealand. But we made it work, and she's amazing. She's so like, everybody listening on the Zoom call was just like hushed with like just the power in voice, like just in a simple line of dialogue.
Oh, that's amazing. So without derailing it entirely, like, do you get to cast the people? Like, do you get your pick of animation voice workers or anybody you want? Like, how does something like this work? How like, is it Doug Liman tells a story about making the Bourne Identity. And in his first negotiations with Universal, while they're casting all the roles, he's like, oh, we could try for a Brian Cox type for this part or a Chris Cooper type for this part. And they said, this is Universal Pictures. You can have Brian Cox and Chris Cooper.
Well, I don't think our budget was that robust. I mean, and also, there's rules like for hiring, like because if it's a co-pro, like, a certain amount of people have to be Canadian and tax credits and But I mean, of course, there's like more than enough talent in Canada for the show. So most of the performers in the show are Canadian. But there are some people who were just really, it was challenging to cast. Like the roles were very specific, some of them. And Gladys, who's Pinecone's mentor on the show, is one of those where like she's this warrior from another time. She's supposed to be like, well, everybody sort of talks with like a modern kind of like, I don't know, like modern sensibilities, modern voices. Gladys is supposed to be like this character out of time. Like she's like 500 years old. And she's like, even though she doesn't look it, and she says like thou and thy and shall, and she's like, nobody else on the show talks like that. Okay. And so we needed to have somebody, basically I wanted somebody who sounded like a female Worf from Star Trek Next Generation. And so we looked and heard a lot of great people, but I mean, I wanted her from the beginning, but I kept being told like, like it's too hard. She's in New Zealand. But lovely Julie, our supervising producer, made it work.
Oh, that's great. That's just, she's somebody who is I've been aware of her for so long, as just this sort of MVP of all the stuff that she's done. All the Kiwi movies she turns up in is just like, oh, I know her. This is going to be a strong moment. And I didn't recognize. I mean, I knew who was in it from the early press, but as Moana was coming out, it's just like, oh, that's Jermaine Clement as a singing. Okay, this movie has room for Jermaine Clement doing a David Bowie number, as well as Rachel House doing this, and Temuera Morrison, who now, of course, is doing just fine with the Boba Fett show. But these are people who are like legitimate legends in their own spheres, suddenly turning up in a Disney film, and it's this kind of mischievous, antic casting sense where it's playful if you know who they are, and if you don't, it's like the Harry Potter movies. Kids are going to discover all the other work these people have done when they start digging in. And somehow in the middle of all of this, we have a completely unknown high school kid. I mean, Ali Carvalho had not done anything, right, when she was cast.
That's incredible, because there's so much confidence in her voice. Like, to have that much confidence and be that young, because like I said, like, she doesn't come off like she's like really insecure. She's not a character who I don't know, who's like really self-deprecating or something. She's like just the right amount to show that she's young, but that you can feel that she has a deep confidence within her.
Yeah, no self-doubt in the voice at all. Like she has a mission, and she's on it from basically the first time we encounter her straight through. Her first song is about how far she's willing to go. It's incredible. And she was 14 when she was cast. And part of it may have been because she kind of looked like the model for Moana, and then they incorporated, she did resemble the character, and then they incorporated some of her physicality as they did it. But it's amazing. But she was sort of immediately just hailed as, oh no, she's not a brilliant new Disney star. She's always supposed to have been here. It just felt like she was just there. That said, I'm a middle-aged guy, so I'm pretty sure I missed all the Disney marketing. I'm sure there's a generation of young girls who know exactly her entire origin story and where she came from, because that would have been part of that marketing, but I was oblivious to it. Just a great voice performance.
Yeah, and immediately so likable right away. You're rooting for her. And she's so funny, and she's like just as funny as Dwayne Johnson. Like she's right alongside him. Like, they're playing off each other so perfectly.
Like, he's always been a generous scene partner, and it's one of those things where I guess it's the wrestling background, right, where you're taught to telegraph your emotions to the back of the room, and you can use your voice as an instrument as much as the braggadocio and the boasting and the yelling. But
and improv on your feet.
Yeah, but I was stunned to find out that they didn't record together. I mean, as far as I know, there's no evidence of it as far as I could see. But it's one of those things where it's like they probably had a chemistry test or something, but it feels like they should have been in this. It feels like they are in the same room. I mean, even so much of the movie hangs on that relationship.
It's so true. It's actually so amazing in general about voice work, how most of the time, I guess, it's done solo. I mean, on our show, it pretty much was all done solo. There was like a couple scenes here and there where we were able to get a couple cast members like patched in on the same Zoom. And I think once where we had people in person maybe, but like, it's astounding, like how much they sound like they're together in the same room when they're not, like, and how like the warmth kind of comes through. I mean, in some cases, what we would do is we would play back the recording of a certain character for like, especially for really emotional moments. We would play what we already had from someone else so that the person could act alongside it.
Sure.
And the lead from Pinecone and Pony, she's like only 11, I think, when we were recording with her, and she's incredible. And most of her recordings were done in a closet with no screen, so she couldn't see the voice director. We couldn't see her. When we had to do like sort of like lip matching, like for like re-recording lines and stuff, but where we couldn't change the animation for like pickups. She couldn't even see the picture that she had to lip match with. She would just hear it, and she would just go from memory of the rhythm of the line she had to deliver. Like it was incredible. She's somebody who's like, yeah, like Auli Cravalho, where you're like, where did you come from? You're just born to do this. You're just a superstar.
That's amazing. I haven't really, I mean, I know there's been so much animation produced during the pandemic because it was the way, right? Like it was the thing you could do safely. But
Mm-hmm.
I never really considered, I've heard stories about how, oh, I recorded this under a blanket fort, these three
Mm-hmm.
lines that we plugged in. But to direct and to coordinate and to do it with younger actors who've never done it before, that's amazing. That's just also terrifying.
Yeah, and some of there were, I think there were 6 recording studios working on it, because we had cast in like in DC, in Connecticut, in LA, and yeah, obviously New Zealand. There was a bunch of different places that we were recording from, and yeah, our poor production coordinator Jen had to coordinate all of that, and the like technicians were so on the ball, like working with each other to make sure like everything was sounding great and we were getting what we needed. And yeah, and then Natalie, our voice director, was like incredible. Like there was a lot of kids on the show,
Hmm.
and because we wanted real kid voices, and they were great. And Natalie is so good at working with kids, like pulling these performances out of them. Several of them I don't think had ever acted before, or a couple of them at least had never acted before, like totally green. And then some had like some acting experience. But like, Moana and then Pinecone have like the bulk of the lines, so many lines, like carrying the whole thing.
Yeah. How long did it take you to find your pine cone?
Oh gosh, months, I want to say. We had an initial casting call, and then I think DreamWorks thought that the person we initially chose sounded too young. And then we did another casting call, including one in the States. And then we had some contenders, but then we went back to the first batch,
Mhm.
and Maria was in that very first batch. And we were like, wait a minute, like this girl, like she was already in our short list from the first batch, but I think listening to her again, and she just sounded the perfect age, like because the Pinecone character is supposed to be 8, but a real 8-year-old, they can be great actors, but it's sometimes hard for them to do a ton of dialogue, and especially if there's like large long chunks and they have to do a lot of reading, because
Sure.
for some kids it's like they've only just learned to read and read all these scripts. So you know, so we wanted somebody who was maybe about like 11. And then we were like, she's perfect. She's amazing. And I think she really made us cry even with her audition, because we worked with her at this one scene that's really emotional. It was the scene from the end of the episode, Treat Your Creature. And it's like the characters actually kind of getting teary and sniffling, and hearing the way she did it, it just sounded so authentic and so real that we were like, sniffling along with her.
Oh man, that's wonderful. I can't wait to see it. I will have by the time this episode drops, but I'm very excited. And yeah, I guess we're sort of springboarding back and forth, but is there, as I understand it, the show allows for interactions between fantastical creatures and animals and people and children. So is there a Moana moment? Did you steal anything from Moana and sort of or stitch it in structurally? Is
Um,
there a tip of the hat?
mm, well, I mean, there are similarities, because Pinecone has a very clear goal. Like she wants to be a warrior. She wants to be the best warrior. So that is kind of a thing that we keep coming back to throughout the series. She wants to be a hero. She wants to help people. But the whole series, she's trying and learning. She's kind of sort of like honing in on what a real hero is, because she kind of, as like we all do, get lost in kind of the trappings of it, of like for her it's like even from Kate's book, she wants a big warrior horse, a strong warrior horse. Like that's something that real warriors have. Real warriors don't wear cozy sweaters. And that's kind of a recurring theme on the show of her thinking she knows what she wants, like thinking she wants to be a hero in a certain way, and then realizing that, oh, actually, you don't have to do that. You can do it this other way, and this other way is equally important and valid. And so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of her sort of like pushing away the sort of the chaff. Is that a word? Stuff that
separating the wheat from the chaff. Yeah, totally.
The chaff. I knew that chaff was a thing. Sort of her like, pushing that away, and sort of honing in on like the truth of what that is to her. And so in that way, I think it is kind of that like hero's journey, even though it's not one, through line like in Moana.
Well, but for Moana, it's about learning that Maui's stories of heroism aren't the kind of hero she wants to be, right? Like it's the different sort of, it's not disillusionment exactly. It's just about discovering the path you want for yourself, or figuring out the mistakes other people have made so you don't make them, which I think is very much about Moana and her dad and all the other stuff that have happened. Like, even if these things happen for perfectly good reasons, and even if these decisions are valid, it's the stuff you don't need to carry forward into the next generation.
It's so true. It's so true. And Moana does that in a very non-judgmental way. She does it so honestly. Like it's all coming from her, and you can feel her figuring it out as she goes, which is amazing. Like on the real cry scene where she's on the boat with her grandmother towards the end, like you feel her like working through what it means to keep going, and what her dream means to her. And it's amazing. But then, and then I feel like I talked so much about her themes. I didn't mention that it's also so funny, like this, and the songs are so good too. I mean, I'm a big nerd, and some people are going to say that like, this is super annoying and they won't agree with me. But I think Lin-Manuel Miranda is an excellent songwriter, and I think his songs are just perfect.
I don't think I can disagree when you're in the animation realm. Like, his stuff is so busy and complex and exuberant that like there are points where you feel like human people can't contain it. Like, I remember sitting there, and I think You're Welcome was the first song in a movie that I could clearly point to and say, oh, Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote that. Because it does his thing. Like, it starts slow and it gets complicated, and then it explodes into a rapping sequence, and then comes back to Broadway music. And not only was I amazed that Dwayne Johnson could do that as a singer, as a performer, but the way the tattoos tell the story, and the way that the visual equivalent works to support the song and illustrate it so you don't get lost, because it moves so quickly. And it happens a couple of times in Encanto too, where the soundtrack is so active, and I don't mean the song, I mean the actual audio is so busy that it's almost hard to listen to some of the lyrics. They're hard to get them clearly. But in You're Welcome, it's just this perfect encapsulation of, this guy does this thing better than any other person on the planet. And it works for Miranda's songcraft, and it works for Maui in his boastfulness. And I just remember watching that scene with Kate. Actually, I think it was released to YouTube as a standalone. The whole song was out there before the movie came out anywhere else digitally. So I came home, found it, put it on, and watched her eyes just go bugging out of her head when he starts rapping, because, oh no, you thought this song was fun and busy. This is what he can do. And the other songs are great. I have no complaints against any of them. Shiny's kind of disposable, but it's a pastiche song. Well, I just want them to get to the other side of it. At that point in the movie, it's just like, keep going. There's more stuff happening. I do like, this guy's okay, but he's not going to figure into the climax. I can tell.
But he's like, when he tears apart Maui, when he's like beating him up basically and being like, you're worthless. It's such a turning point for that character.
That's true.
it's so character revealing, like how low he's brought so quickly. Like you're like, oh, this guy is insecure. Like
That's true.
it, and then it's just such a funny song. I saw that movie in theaters with Jocelyn and with Ebony, and we were all laughing so hard at that song when he's like, I sparkle like a wealthy woman's neck.
Yeah.
Like what kind of line is that? It made us laugh.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fun character. It just felt to me that he's an obstacle rather than an actual story element. It's fun. And Tamatoa is beautifully realized. I don't want to take anything away. And Jermaine Clement is the only person in the cast of Moana who's actually been on this podcast. So I have to be very nice. But he picked RoboCup. It was great.
That's awesome.
It really was.
I feel so crazy attracted to him that that crab is somehow strangely attractive too. I love, yeah, but like you were saying though, like it does, the crab is an obstacle. But that, I feel like that's what makes it feel like that classic, like you learn it in school, that hero's journey, where it's like with the literal, like the line and the, like your teacher's drawing it on the board,
Right.
and these are where the obstacles land. And it really felt like that classic to me, that I was like, you know what? Good for you. You pulled out your notes from like grade 7 English class and you went to town, and it's perfect. And it feels so satisfying because there's a reason that structure has worked since, I don't know, ancient Greece. Like,
Yeah.
like that's like, it feels right to see the hero get tested in that way.
That's fair. And these are like John Musker and Ron Clements are the guys who made The Little Mermaid. They know this inside and out. They tell these stories for Disney for decades, and then suddenly here's a movie that they made. It's their first CG venture too, which maybe let them feel more liberty than they'd had before, but they could do something that undermines and subverts all of those things. Like he is just an obstacle. He's not Gaston, right, who's the driver of all the second half of Beauty and the Beast, or Ursula, who is the reason everything happens in The Little Mermaid. He's just this crab who shows up and is more powerful and has to be defeated for everyone to move forward. And it's still, I mean, it now I feel like I have to apologize. I like the character. He's a speed bump is what I'm saying.
Oh, for sure. And same with the coconut characters that they fight, on their coconut boat. It's like there's these moments that show you and show Moana, and Moana is showing Maui how valuable she is, like how tough she actually is, because she saves their ass in both of those.
Yep.
And she doesn't, like, she's like thinking on the fly, like that it's not like because she's got these like, amazing superpowers, but it's because she's her. And then she's proving it she's showing Maui. And then the second one with the crab, it's like, not only is she showing him how awesome she is, but she's showing him how troubled he is.
Yeah. Everything she does reveals a larger truth about everybody else around her. And yet she's not annoying. Like, she's not a scold. Mm-hmm. She genuinely wants to help people.
Yeah. Yeah. She feels like a real nice teen that you want to come babysit your kids, because she'll be a great babysitter and teach them a lot about themselves.
That's a great way to put it. I would watch that. I would watch that show.
Moana, the teen babysitter?
Yeah.
I would watch that too. They land they're on their ships, they're voyaging, post her adventure, but now she's just babysitting on the different ships while the parents go visit friends on another ship.
Yeah. I mean, not every sequel has to be the same movie again. There's room to grow. I
wonder if they'll ever do a Moana 2 the way they used to do, like the straight to, VHS sequels to the old Disney movies.
Oh, I hope not. I mean, I'm sure it's inevitable, but unless it does something genuinely different, I don't see, like, I never want to see that stuff. I remember reviewing the old sequels like Bambi 2 and stuff like that, where you just don't need them. You just don't need. The only one that worked for me, weirdly enough, was the Beauty and the Beast one, The Enchanted Christmas, because it had the bizarre gall to declare that the first movie, the original Beauty and the Beast, takes place during Christmas. We just didn't notice. And it's knitting all this other action in while the beast is still a beast. Like, it's set in those 3 days. It's ridiculous.
I have to see that. Is that the one where they had this scene where like she's reading Romeo and Juliet with him, and then he's like, I can't read? Or was that like, oh no, I think they released like an extended version.
Yeah, I think that was something that was just deleted
with an extra song.
I think so, yeah. That sounds right. Maybe it's in the work in progress cut that was released way back when on Laserdisc.
Laserdisc.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know, but check out The Enchanted Christmas if you can. I'm sure it's on Disney Plus. It's nuts. In the best possible way of watching genuinely creative people try to figure out how the hell to make another one of the thing that ended. Because they can't have Prince Eric running around as a human, because that's not the brand.
Yeah, because you don't want to just see like, oh, here's people working at a castle. The clocks are just clocks now.
Yeah, exactly. That's the spin-off series nobody wants to see. Sorry, and it wasn't Prince Eric. Eric was from The Little Mermaid. I'm mixing them up in my head. Do we even know his name in Beauty and the Beast?
Beast.
Prince Beast.
Prince Beast.
Oh, that's just going to turn into a weird sex thing if you follow it forward.
I like that. In the live action version they did, in the first scene, that had a kind of like a Bowie feel. When like, did you see the live action version?
I did, yeah.
Remember when at the beginning as like Dan Stevens comes in and he's his face is all painted and he's like got the hair and the outfit and he's leading the ball and you're like, wow, he was like really glam before he turned into a beast.
Decadent prince.
Mm-hmm.
These are all these Disney movies are about characters who have to better themselves under duress, right? Like Moana chooses the trial, which I think is much more interesting. There's no curse. Like, I mean, the same with Ariel. She chose to get legs and go look for her prince. But when the heroes are the ones who choose the journey, it's just so much more interesting.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. And it's like, she has this destiny, I guess, like where the ocean like chose her when she was a baby. But at the same time, you could just sort of interpret that as like, how does any passion choose you? Like, really, aren't you the one choosing, what you want to be when you grow up? But it feels like you've been chosen by it, because that's how passion kind of works, like it feels like it's like you're getting swept up in a wave. And like, even though it's coming from you.
My thanks to Stephanie Kaliner, whose delightful kids series Pinecone and Pony is now streaming on Apple TV+. Watch it with your kids, or just enjoy it yourself. Thanks also to Barb Matheson. She knows what she did. You can find Steph on Twitter at Steph Kaliner, all one word, and you can find Moana on 4K, Blu-ray, and DVD from Walt Disney Home Entertainment. It's also streaming on Disney+, of course, and available to rent or buy on most VOD platforms. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. And I'm once again reminding you that I've made the first year of the podcast available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 46 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. payhip.com/Semcast. You're welcome. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been enjoying us. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your booster when you can. I'll see you next time.